Welcome to the show, everybody. Now, normally we come out here, we have fun, we try to entertain you, and we will do that. We'll get there eventually, but here we are again. Our hearts are broken. Another mass shooting in another U.S. school. Yeah, it is becoming terrifyingly and heartbreakingly familiar. Too much. Are we at that point where we're just helpless to stop these shootings? We're joined by former U.S. Secretary of Education Arne Duncan, and welcome to you. Thank you for joining us for this discussion. But you know, I'm a mother. I have 2 kids in school. Are our schools safe?
Well, you're a mother, I'm a dad with 2 kids in school, and for me it's really not about schools. Honestly, the safest place most of our kids are every single day is in school. Obviously what happened yesterday is very, very typical. The question is our society safe?
Right.
Whether it's schools, whether it's malls, whether it's movie theaters, whether it's concerts, the common theme here is guns. And A-15 assault weapons. And it is beyond heartbreaking. I just think, I always am honest, I just think here in America we value our guns more than we value our children.
Right.
And other countries make other policy decisions and kids just don't die. Right. And the fact that that's where we are is mind-boggling, it's heartbreaking, it's terrifying. I'm always hopeful. Other countries have made other choices. If we had a little bit more moral courage, we could fix this. But so far, we lack it.
All right, here's the thing. Every law is created to protect our fundamental rights, to protect our safety. Every time something happens in this country, we change the law to address that. It's the reason why we have speed limits. It's the reason why you can't drink and drive. It's the reason why we changed the way we travel after 9/11. And we did it immediately. This keeps happening over and over again. Even from the time we started this show, we've had this discussion so many times. Why can't we, despite political agenda, despite your beliefs, why can't we find common ground on this issue? Money, NRA, guns?
I think the NRA owns, I don't say that lightly, owns far too many members of Congress, mostly Republicans, but frankly some Democrats on our side as well. And during my 7 years in DC working for President Obama, during his 8 years, he's talked about this publicly. His hardest day, my hardest day, was the Sandy Hook massacre, Newtown, Connecticut, which was 20 babies and 5 teachers and the principal all killed. He went down the next day. The vice president and I went down a couple days later, and meeting with those families and meeting with surviving siblings, it's indescribable. And the fact that we got nothing done, 0 done in terms of doing anything to make kids and families and communities safer, it's our biggest failure, failure.
The majority of the country is for common sense gun legislation. And were you surprised today that the president didn't even mention guns in his remarks, and also that Paul Ryan didn't mention guns, and then Marco Rubio said, oh gosh, now's not the time to talk about it.
Right.
So when
is the time?
Yeah, when is the time to talk about it, and why? What's the holdup?
Yeah. I'm not surprised. That's who they are. They are who they are. And that's just our reality. I'm so tired of politicians talking about our thoughts and prayers. Yeah. I'm all for thoughts and prayers. We need action, we need legislation, we need bills passed that make kids and communities safer. Just a little context. In 1996, there was a massacre in Australia, in Tasmania, 20 years ago. That's my wife is from. In the 20 years, and after that happened, the next 3 weeks, gun laws changed in that country. Over the past 20 years, 21 years now, there hasn't been a single mass shooting in Australia. That's the gift that those politicians gave to their country. There's had a whole generation of kids grow up and they don't know what a mass shooting is. This is happening every single week in our country and has for a long time. We refuse to give that gift to our children, to our communities.
Right. And this is why, at the end of the day, showing up at the polls when it's time to vote your congressman in, that really makes a difference, because it's those people there who are in, I don't know if should I say in bed with the gun lobbyists, but that they're valuing that side more so than the safety of our young babies.
Dollars count more than human life. And that's a devastating thing to say, but it's just the absolute truth. And let me be really clear, this has to happen at the federal level. This is a national issue. We could have great gun laws here in Chicago, but Indiana is porous, and guns pour into us from Indiana across the board. None of us are islands. And so this has to be something that, as a nation, the United States is wildly more violent than any other country like us. That's because of our inaction and because of our lack of commitment. And so this has to be taken up at the federal level.
Right. And President Obama did make a law where if you had mental issues or you were on a list, you would not be able to buy AR-15s or any kind of gun law, right? And then President Trump comes into office a year ago, February, and he reverses that law.
Everything gets walked back. And we didn't go far enough, to be clear. We would have liked to have gone so much further.
But you kept getting opposition, though, right?
You got to pass laws through Congress. And so again, for me, Republican, Democrat, I could care less. You know, I'm an educator. Education, keeping our kids safe. There's nothing Republican or Democrat or left or right about these issues.
Right.
This is just about our families, our values. And if we can't stand up for kids, if we can't make our country safer, who are we?
Right.
Who are we?
It's a public safety issue is what we're dealing with here. It's not a political issue. 18 shootings, and we're only in mid-February. 18 shootings in schools. We're only in February. The president did speak earlier. Here's what he had to say.
I want you to know that you are never alone and you never will be. You have people who care about you, who love you, and who will do anything at all to protect you. If you need help, turn to a teacher, a family member, a local police officer, or a faith leader. Answer hate with love, answer cruelty with kindness.
So that was the president talking directly to students. And are we doing everything we can to protect their safety?
It seems like there's so much cutback on funding for something he brought up constantly was mental health. So what do you say to the folks that say, oh, well, the guns aren't killing people. It's a mental health issue.
It's so dishonest and disingenuous. I mean, I get so angry talking about this stuff. This has got to be personal. The United States does not have a monopoly on mental health issues. There are people with mental health challenges all over the planet. They just don't have access to guns. And so we can deal with that. We should do more, but we have to take on the issue. What's killing people is not mental health challenges. What's killing people are assault weapons, weapons that police don't have, weapons of war and mass destruction. That's what's killing people. And our unwillingness to deal with that fact. And for me, it's not just, again, I can't imagine sending my kid to school and them never coming home again. Unimaginable. But it's a level of fear that so many of our kids, whether it's in inner city Chicago, the guys I'm working with on the South and West Side, whether it's in Florida, Aurora, across the country, the level of fear that our kids are living with, it's simply not fair. We're robbing them of their childhoods. We don't have to do that. They shouldn't have to grow up like that.
Right.
No, and should there be this extra pressure on teachers to spot out those troubled kids and deal with those troubled kids? It's too much.
Well, again, all good teachers look out for students and help on mental health issues, and we should do that, and they do that every day, and social workers and counselors, and we should fund more of that. But again, that's not what's causing the loss of life. There are children with mental health challenges in Australia, in Japan, in England. That's not the issue. The fact that with no background check, the fact that 18-year-old without a driver's license can have access to assault weapons and thousands of rounds of ammunition, clearly that's what we value. We value that more than we value human life.
Yeah, no question. And you said schools are just one part of it. I lost two people. I lost my brother-in-law and a friend in Vegas. It's happening at concerts. It's happening at churches. If you can't go to church without the fear of getting killed and mowed down by weapons of mass destruction, where can you go? Now, somebody parents watching.
A lot of moms are at home
right now with their kids in Chicago schools. This is something that we have dealt with in Chicago for a long time. Our gun issues. What can we say to them?
Yeah, and again, to be clear, generally across the country and here in Chicago, schools are often the safest place that kids are. And schools do so much, and we did so much to try and keep schools safe. And the truth is, here in Chicago, fortunately, none of this stuff is happening in schools, but it's to and from school. It's going to the corner store. And so, again, making our schools safe, that's an absolute priority. But this is, as we keep repeating, this is a societal issue. This is a national issue. And for you who have lost loved ones and friends, I hear your passion. I know what this means. But we have to think about everyone's children. And we have to think about everyone's children. And do we value them? Or do we value our guns at all costs?
Right. And people argue, oh, it's in the Second Amendment. It's in the Second Amendment. But did our forefathers really envision this happening when that Second Amendment was written in the 1700s when we had muskets?
I don't think our forefathers knew what AR-15 was.
Of course not.
And again, let me be very, very clear. If people want to hunt geese or ducks or deer, I have no problem with that. I do have a problem when human beings get hunted. I do have a problem when kids get killed. And there's a huge divide there. The public on these measures, again, background checks, not having access to assault weapons, not having folks who are, have mental challenges have access to guns. The public, 70, 80, 90% of Americans support these things.
Right.
Congress is divorced from reality across the country. And until we vote and change that, nothing's going to happen.
It's a mid-election year. This is Groundhog's Day. We've been here. As just an average citizen, what can we do? What can we do? I mean, sometimes it's not like we have the best candidates to vote for either way.
Well, I will say again, this has to be played at the national level, but when we were in D.C., my wife and I, we actually lived with our kids in Virginia. In the most recent elections in Virginia, there were 14 candidates in local elections, 14 backed by the NRA, the other 14 not. 13 of those not backed by the NRA won. Folks who are fighting for gun control and just common sense things. So we have to vote. Our voices have to be heard. Again, I don't care liberal. I don't care what your politics are. It's a parent's worst nightmare to lose your child. We all have to come together to have our kids grow up safe, protect them, and free of fear.
If you had an opportunity to talk to our leaders right now, Trump, Paul Ryan, Marco Rubio, what would you say to them directly?
Where's your heart? Where's your heart? This isn't about politics. They're all parents. How can some campaign contributions be worth watching this? They're not just complicit. They are creating these massacres. These are man-made massacres. This is not a tsunami. It's not an earthquake. These are man-made disasters because we refuse to do the right thing. We absolutely control this. We could fix this tomorrow. We could fix this next week. Other folks have done that. Their lack of heart, their lack of soul is stunning.
Right, we're the only developed country with a problem like this, and we saw congressmen get shot on a softball field.
Doesn't matter.
Nothing changed. We saw little kids die at Sandy Hook. Nothing changed, and it's
cyclical.
We see it. The mass shooting happens. Thoughts and prayers happen. Too early to talk about gun control. On to the next thing, and then we keep going around and around.
I'll tell you, this is a really tough thing to say, but when I was the CEO of Chicago Public Schools, we lost far too many kids due to gun violence. And that was by far the hardest part of my job, was going to those funerals and going to those homes and going to those classrooms where there was an empty desk and trying to make sense of the senseless. What I thought was that America didn't care about black and brown kids. Those were the kids that we were losing here in Chicago. Right. But when Sandy Hook happened, and those were white kids and white babies and white teachers and white principal, and still nothing changed, then I understood it wasn't just about race and racism. It was just a lack of value of human life.
Arne Duncan, we appreciate you so much.
Big thanks to you.